DJ Erica.
Welcome to another episode of the DJ Erica podcast. Today we have a special guest up in the building, two-time Grammy Award winning frontman of Arrested Development. Speech is up in the building. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's really good to be here. I appreciate you.
Yeah. So it's been a lot going on. We got a lot of trying times these days with COVID and the election and everything else.
It has. It's been more trying than any time I can really remember. 2020 has been so unique, and the challenges that we face in this nation are so unique. So yeah.
Yeah, and personally, I just want to talk about your overall career and everything else, and how you started your entire group up until now, and the work that you're doing. So from my research, it says that you are originally from Milwaukee. Is that correct?
Yeah, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And both of your parents are well-known entrepreneurs. Your mom actually started one of the first news publications, Black news publications in Milwaukee. That's also correct?
Yeah, and she has the largest Black newspaper to this day. Yeah, in Wisconsin. Yeah.
And also, I wanted to know like about how you started your music career. From what I'm seeing, your dad was an entrepreneur, and he started. He had a nightclub as well.
That's correct. So yeah, my father owned a place called the Fox Trap. It was a nightclub. And I was around 10 years old probably when he started it. By the time I was 13, I was DJing at it. And I just fell in love with music, just seeing the power of people dancing every night. You know, I used to go there after school, and my parents both worked. So I couldn't really go home as a young kid because I just would have been there by myself. So at 10, I used to take the bus to the nightclub. And obviously it was in the daytime. So I just hang out, but I would see the DJs rehearsing their sets. I would see them setting up the tables, you know, cleaning off the tables and just all the sort of background stuff of nightclubs. And then I would see the actual nightclub, you know, and it would open around 9 o'clock or whatever. And I go home really late. I do my homework, fall asleep in the back of the nightclub. And I wake up, go out there, watch people dancing. And I just see the power of the DJ, the power of music. I fell in love with that power. I was like, man, that's serious right there, what they're able to do. And I would see people walk into the club and they feel down or they be crying or whatever. And I see them leaving and they felt different. And I was like, this is, you know, music is something that's more than just entertainment. It's a very important part of all of our lives.
And then in that moment is when you started to notice that you wanted to pursue a career in music.
Yeah, I started DJing at 13. I fell in love with that. Hip hop came out in 79 for me. Rapper's Delight was the first record I ever heard. I heard this record called Grandmaster Flash Adventures on the Wheels of Steel. And that was a record where Grandmaster Flash was mixing various other records. And I fell in love with it. I was like, I want to be a DJ at that time. Then I learned how to rhyme and I wanted to be a rapper. And, you know, it just started to evolve from there. Now I produce and rap and, you know, DJ still and all of that.
And during the 80s, I would say around the mid 80s is when you started your first group, music group, right?
It's true. We had a group called Attack, and I started that group. It was me, brother that's now named DJ Kimmett, but back in the day, his name was Special K, and a brother that's was murdered. Unfortunately, his name is T.A. Wiz. So it was me and those other two brothers. And we were the first to put out a rap record in the city of Milwaukee. And so we were popular around the high schools. You know, I was in high school, so we were all in high school. And it was popular around the high schools. A lot of people really dug the music, but it was strictly in Milwaukee. We couldn't really get it to break anywhere else. So I left Milwaukee in 87, came to Atlanta, which is where I'm at now, and started Arrested Development. And that, of course, took off.
And you went to the Art Institute in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, that's where I met Headliner, which became my best friend, and then I started the group. I hung up a flyer in the hallway looking for a DJ because at that point I wanted to rhyme, and he was, yeah. So I saw a Headliner looking at a flyer that I put up looking for a DJ, and he was, you know, just staring at it, and I was like, hey man, you know, my name is Speech, and started telling him about what I was striving to put together. And we struck it up from there. Real cool dude. And we became best friends. he became the DJ for what I wanted to create. And then I started adding members through that, after that. And he even added members too. So it was cool. It was like just a really good energy and a good place to start a group. Being in the Art Institute, it was creative. And Headliner was a really cool cat. And, from South Carolina area, real cool dude.
And you are, people would say like a conscious group, because you come from an era where diversity was a good thing in hip hop. It's like nowadays it seems that everyone seems to follow the same formula.
Yeah.
But you were a group that basically was very revolutionary in the way that you presented yourself. Was that something that you consciously did, or it just came to you naturally?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, I believe that everybody is absolutely original if they be themselves. Like whenever we try to be other people, that's when we lose a lot of our most valuable parts about us. And so it was two things. Back in those days, it was celebrated being diverse and different. So we were definitely wanting to be different. And at the same time, a lot of it was me personally just trying to be as authentic and the real me as I possibly could be. And that paid off.
And at the time when you guys signed your record deal, how many people was that in the group? Because it seems to be a pretty large group.
Yeah, it was only 6 members so Arrested Development started in an interesting way where me and Headliner would go to different clubs. He was DJing, I was rhyming, and I would invite people on stage. And it would be anywhere from 20 people on stage. And we started doing that more and more. And then once we got a record deal, you couldn't afford to bring 20 people on the road with you. So we had to really, and especially me, I had to really decide like who's in this group. And it turned out to be 6 members. And it was me, Headliner, Ishi, Baba OJ, Razadon, and Airly Tari. And that ended up being the 6 that people would get to know from a mainstream standpoint. But before that, we had a lot of members that, in a sense, we had to decide not to take them on the road and not to put them on album covers and stuff like that.
And how old were you when you signed your first record deal?
I want to say 21, 22, somewhere in there, maybe 20, something like that. Yeah.
And did you have full creative freedom for the work that you guys are putting out?
Yeah, we did. Well, the cool thing was about the first record is we got signed to a single deal initially. It was for a song, Mr. Wendal, and a B-side of a song called Natural. And then I'd already created most of the rest of the record, but just on cassette tapes. We used to record on cassette tapes back in the day. And so the record was pretty much created. And we shot that and all of that, but they only wanted to do the single deal. And then unfortunately, my grandmother passed away. She was my closest grandmother. And then my brother passed away the same week. And the last place I saw both of them was in Tennessee. And so I wrote the song Tennessee. And that song was listened to by the label. I told them I wanted to release this song first instead of any of the other stuff. And they listened to it, loved it. And we shot a video for it. And that got us the album deal. Even though we had a record in the, like I said, on cassette, we were able to then record the whole album in a professional studio and put that out. So yeah, it was sort of a process.
And the single Tennessee, of course, you guys blew up from that single. Did it pick up instantly, or did it take some time for it to like pick up?
Fortunately or unfortunately, it took a minute. Like we felt like, man, this song right here is so special, it's so crazy. As soon as it drops, people are gonna go crazy. And we were wrong. Like as soon as it dropped, it took about 3 months. And if you can imagine a young dude like myself, the day it drops, I'm expecting to hear bubbles, like people talking about it, and nothing. Then the next week, nothing. The next week, it took 3 months. And by 3 months, it started to get picked up by MTV. They had a show called Buzz Clips, and they put the video out on that. And that was it. It went through the roof, and everybody was falling in love with the music and the video and the group.
Wow. And so at this point, you guys are just like taking off, and the music is just everywhere. How did you feel starting up like in college with a dream to just all of a sudden you guys are basically hip hop, big hip hop stars.
It was surreal. It was absolutely surreal because, it was our first record. It was coming out of Atlanta. Chris, the groups that were from Atlanta, they weren't mainstream. So they were only popular locally. And so basically, you know, it was absolutely mind blowing for us and a lot of uncharted territory for us. Like we didn't know what to do because it hadn't been done before. And hip hop was pretty much a virgin at that point. It was really only the East Coast and West Coast that was popping off. You had a couple successes in Texas with the Ghetto Boys and down in Florida with Two Live Crew, and that was it. And so hip hop wasn't this nationwide phenomenon yet. And Atlanta wasn't this, what it has become now, which is a hub for hip hop music. So we were charting a lot of uncharted territory.
So speaking of charts, so the song Tennessee did pretty well on a crossover basis because you guys made it on the hip hop charts, the pop charts. What was the number placement?
I don't remember, but I know we made number one on on the hip hop and R&B charts, I believe. And then I think, got to number 3 or 6. I've heard different stories and I forget exactly, but I know we got in the top 10 on the pop charts, which is amazing for hip hop. And it was amazing for that time period. So and for Atlanta, just for Atlanta to get that kind of recognition, Atlanta needed that. We really hadn't had that type of love. And so Atlanta was put on the map with us and Criss Cross. Criss Cross was produced by Jermaine Dupri and we were produced by me. So it was a lot of love coming from Atlanta at that point. And this is before LaFace Records came down and the whole LA Babyface movement that happened soon after. So that was Outkast with that movement and all of that stuff that happened later. Goody Mob.
So you were like the pioneers of like this the entire like Atlanta movement. You guys were the first ones to like go like multi-platinum.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I mean, along with Criss Cross, like I said, yeah, definitely. It was brand new. I don't. If there was anybody else, I don't know who they were, but yeah, it was definitely new. Like I said, and it was surreal for us, because like I said, everything was so unique, and uncharted. So it was great. And some mistakes were made and we did a lot of amazing like work for hip hop music to expose people to hip hop and expose people to a different style of hip hop. So a different area of, location and also a different style. So I was really proud. And men and women in the same group, that hadn't been done in years in hip hop. There was a group called Funky 4+1 that did it back in the late 70s, early 80s, but they were only one group that did it. We did it again. We brought live music to the scene, like again, where Stetsasonic had done it prior, but nobody since them. And so it was a lot of cool things that we were doing, having an elder in the group. Nobody had done that. Heavy Set Sisters, different sizes. And, it was just this community energy wasn't done in hip hop. And that was prior to Missy doing that type of vibe. And so there was a lot of really cool things that we were charting out at that time.
And the single Tennessee, just to give like background, you did a sample from Alphabet Street from Prince, right? And what was the story behind that? Because he said that he had reached out to you about using the sample.
Yeah. Well, back then sampling rules and laws weren't very concrete. And so, I used the sample and I didn't hear anything from Prince. And then the record had gotten to the highest that it was going to get in its position on the charts. And in the moment it went down, I got a call from Prince's office. And, he wanted to charge $100,000 for that word. Because all I did was sample, he has this section in Alphabet Street. He goes, I want to put it on my back seat and drive up to Tennessee. And I just used Tennessee. That's it. I didn't use none of the other music, no drum beats, no nothing. And he charged $100,000 for that. And at first I was like, man, this is crazy. This is rape. But then as I got more savvy about how the industry works and just being a veteran in the industry, and this was many years later, I realized, and I met Prince later too, but I realized that he really did us a favor because we made a lot of money with the record anyways. first of all. Second of all, he only charged us 100,000, which he could have charged more if he wanted. And third of all, he could have taken the record off the shelf and just totally like squashed our career if he wanted to. And he didn't do that. So I actually, I learned a lot from dealing with him on that situation, that he really did us a favor.
Wow. And then the overall project also spent out another single, Mr. Wendal. And I wanted to know the story behind that single as well.
Yeah, Mr. Wendal's a cool tune where me and my man Headliner, we used to hang with homeless guys. Like there's a studio on Edgewood in Atlanta that we used to hang at. And Edgewood happens to be a place where a lot of homeless dudes would be at. And so they'd stop through, they hear the music, they stop through, and we didn't turn them away or anything. It was like, yo, come on in, man. And we start talking. And it really became a great building, what I call a building session, where we would just build on politics, on spirituality, on relationships, on life. And they were just always insightful, more insightful than people would think. And so the idea to do a song that makes this homeless man human and have these deep ideas and wisdom came from these guys, so that's where that song was inspired from.
And then also from the album as well, you released Everyday People, and that one really just like it's like one of my favorite out of the three. What was the inspiration behind that single?
Well, the inspiration lyrically was, I grew up in Milwaukee, as you know, and in Milwaukee, it's always been a very sort of, I don't know, a very oppressed town. Statistically, Milwaukee is one of the worst places for Black people to live. And I grew up in that atmosphere. So there's a lot of hatred against ourselves, and therefore there's a lot of hatred against each other. And so I would wear like dreads, which weren't popular back in the early 90s and late 80s. And so I wear dreads, I wear maybe some type of African print or something. And other brothers would come, and just because I had on this cultural clothing would want to mess with me and so if I'm on a date with my girl, they're wanting to mess around. And so it was this conflict between the ignorance of not understanding that this cultural stuff is our heritage. It's stuff that we really would be rocking a lot more of if we weren't taken with chattel slavery and the whole 400 years of oppression that has happened with that. We would be rocking a lot more cultural stuff. So they didn't get that because they weren't on that conscious tip. So the song is just explaining this tension. It still happens today in a lot of ways where, you just have tension within the community. And so the song's just saying I'm everyday people, because, you can't go around sort of treating anybody any kind of way without repercussions.
And so you eventually, like, your entire album basically like sold like 6 million, this first album, freshman album, right? And this leads to Grammy nominations. And before I even talk about how it felt to win the award, when and how did you find out that you were nominated for Grammys?
Yeah, I don't totally remember, because for us it was a very crazy moment, because the award shows tend to happen at the same time. So like a lot of them happen in January and early February. So within weeks of time, we were doing all these award shows, from NAACP, American Music Awards, which I don't think comes on anymore, then Soul Train Awards, MTV Awards, and the Grammys. And so we got information, and we were winning awards or nominated in all of those. So we were like very swamped with huge interview schedules, a lot of photo shoots, tons of, stylists doing various concepts for the photo shoot, building set designs for performances on different stages, just a lot of behind the scenes work being put into a very big selling group. And so I don't remember when we first got the information, but I do remember my manager calling me, and my manager at the time was Jermaine Dupri's dad. His name is Michael Malden. And he called me and said, yo, you guys are nominated for a Grammy. And I wanted to sit because Michael Jackson was there, Lenny Kravitz was there, Madonna, like all of these A-list, artists. And total idols of mine in most instances. And I wanted to sit like in the second row, third row, and he insisted that I sit in the front row. And so that gave me a sort of an idea of, oh, okay, I might need to be ready, excuse me, to go up on stage. So that sort of gave me my idea that we might win.
And you did win. You actually won best new artist, which is a very very big award. That's something that is like you're competing with different genres in that award category, and you also won for best rap performance. So how did it feel to win best new artist and also best rap performance on your freshman album?
It was unreal. And I mean that when I say that, like it was unreal. Um, most people that grew up in the era that I did, Grammys is the height, it's the pinnacle. There is no higher. So to win a Grammy is like your dream. And also for it to be our first record, I can't express it enough how crazy that is, because you're not getting used to this world. You're thrown right in. It's like being thrown into the deep end on the pool, or in the ocean. So it's like, okay, everything was just trippy. I will say this, like Oprah Winfrey came up with this idea of living the moment, and that was way later. I wish she was around when I was younger, because I don't think I had a chance to live the moment because it wasn't a thing back then. We were just overwhelmed with all of the success, learning about the music industry all at once, learning how to have money in our lives. We never had money like that. Learning how to get along as a group, learning how to, continue the success of the group, learning how to do interviews, learning how to be around other celebrities, learning how to do shows and do better shows and all of that stuff. It was like everything was a learning curve. So like nothing was gradual. Everything was just thrown at you at one time. And that's if I could try to paint the environment that we were in, that's it.
And of course, with all that going on, the fandom, the fame, and everything else, you might make different like mistakes, or you have different regrets. Do you have any like regrets that you made back in the day that you wish you could have changed or you learned from?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was 28 years ago, so it was a lot of years ago. So much of it I forget, and I'm glad I have, because I've moved on, and like, I'm the type that's striving to be in the now. But being a popular group, you have these group dynamics that photographers want me as the lead vocalist and producer of the group. They want me to come to the front. And even if I'm trying to sort of be in the back and blend in with the rest of the group, they're always like, yo, Speech, come to the front. And so I'll do it and we'll do the shoot, but I'm not realizing that to other group members, they're feeling like I'm being some kind of way. They're feeling like, yo, why is it always about Speech? Why not me? And then, and then it's like, because I write and I produce and I do beats and all of that, if I'm making more money than them, because in the music industry, people that write and produce get more money than sometimes the artists that sing or rap. So it just depends. And so if I'm getting more money than they are, they're looking at me sideways like, yo, why is he, so there's a lot that we're learning in real time. And if I had to do it over again, and if I knew what I know now, I would be more explanatory or whatever, and explain like what's going on and try to make everybody understand what's happening and stuff like that.
And did you ever have moments where like, because sometimes like the labels they try to like split groups up. Did you have a moment where any like behind the scenes they try to say like, we don't need you, we don't really need the group? Have you ever had that moment?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of meddling that goes on with the label where, they're trying to maximize whoever they think the star power is in the group. And there was that type of meddling. And unfortunately with us, because of our success right off the bat, everybody starts getting basically like cliques or camps. Like the group has 6 members, every member had their own camp, and basically their camp is out to try to maximize how much money they can make and how they can capitalize on this success as much as possible, but sometimes to the injury of the group itself, or to, to the downside of our unity as a group. And so it was buck wild in that sense too.
And did you also get like any like commercial deal offers too? Like, since you became so big and stuff like that, did that also become a conflicting of interest in the group as well?
Definitely. And so one of the biggest ones is we got an offer from Coca-Cola to do $1 million commercial. And to paint the picture of that era, hip hop music was very dignified about trying to maintain its integrity. Like we didn't want those that loved hip hop and grew up really passionate about hip hop. We didn't want it to sell out to corporations. We didn't want to just make it something where it's just about getting the bag, as they say today. It was more about making sure that this art, lived and that it was authentic and real. And so I turned it down, and I turned it down by myself. Like I didn't ask the group members, I didn't get advice, I didn't vote. I turned it down because I felt like it was going to, first of all, tarnish the revolutionary spirit of what the group is about. But also, I felt like it was going to be looked at as a sellout, like, so at the time period, MC Hammer had, he had done a commercial deal with, what was it, KFC, I think it was. And he did like, or maybe it was Popeyes or something, but he did like a popcorn shrimp type commercial. And everybody in hip hop was like crushing him on that. And he made, I'm sure, quite a lot of money on doing it, but it was a lot of pushback on that. And so that's just to give you the atmosphere. I didn't turn ours down just because of MC Hammer, but I think the philosophy was basically, no, we don't want to sell out to corporations. And I wish we all would have stuck to that. I know that a lot of people have made money since then. I get it. I get how the game, as they call hip hop music, has evolved to that. But I personally also see the downsides of corporations running the incentives for this music. It's a huge downside. And I talk about it in one of my documentaries I released called The Nigga Factory. I talk about it in detail. So if people are interested in my views on that, go check out The Nigga Factory on YouTube, and it's by me. So yeah, there's a lot of downsides to it.
Oh, and speaking of that, I was gonna say that towards the end, but let's talk about it right now. Your documentary, The Nigga Factory, I was up watching it, and I just like fell in love with just like the entire presentation with that. And
Okay.
I was just so detailed, and each one is about, I would say, less than like 15 minutes, but it's so
Yeah.
detailed and well put together. And I was just wondering, like, what sparked the idea of putting together that documentary, and how long did it take for you to make those series?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate all the compliments on The Nigga Factor. Yeah, it was a dream of mine since People Every Day record. Because in People Every Day back in '92, I talk about the nigga and the African. And I've always felt like we're not niggas as Black people. I felt like the nigga is something that has been created in us by white supremacists. They've created this concept that we're niggas, that we're violent, that we're, and I understand that we have violence in our community in certain ways, and I get all of that, but I'm saying like this idea that we're niggas and not people, and it's ridiculous to me. So I've always felt like we have been conditioned to behave in certain ways by constant bombardment of imagery that is negative of us,
Mhm.
constant bombardment of what we should act like, how we should be. And these things have taken effect on us over hundreds of years of doing it. And so the Nigga Factory was made to help expose this constant assault on Black people, not just on us, but the assault has also affected everybody else's view on us. So when you go overseas or when you go anywhere, people often only know about Black people from the media that they see about us coming from America. And so if they only see strippers, or if they only see, WAP or whatever is the new craze that's coming from us in America, then that's what they believe. They haven't been here. So many of them haven't been here. So they're not going to see the whole community and, oh, this is just a slither of what we represent. There's a whole lot of people that graduate college that are doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, you name it. social workers, all types of people that live in our community. You don't see that on our media too much. And so what you tend to see is pimps, hustlers, thugs, gangsters, hoes, strippers, whatever. So that's what you tend to see. And if you can put your mindset to someone living in another country, which we're only a very small percent in the United States of the world, then that's what they believe we are. They haven't been here to see any different. Just like we tend to believe what Africa is if we haven't been to the continent. We tend to think it's all poor and everybody is, got flies on their face and got big bloated stomachs because everybody's starving. It's a ridiculous truth, a ridiculous propaganda tool, but it works and people believe these things.
Wow, and that is so true. And like the thing is that we've seen that part of you speaking about like being conscious about the Black community in your music, but it's awesome to see that you basically you're putting a documentary to it. So you're basically putting a film to your movement overall. And I seen that you said that you kind of like halted the production on it. Do you know when you're gonna get back to more videos on it?
Yeah, COVID-19 did it. I mean, me and my team, which I have an incredible team. You had hinted to this earlier, like how good the quality is on it, and like how professional, and at least the way I see it, is excellent. We put that together because it wasn't just thrown together. And my team and I, great guys, all Black, and Black, what I consider Black excellence. And we put that together, part 3, which is going to be the last part of the Nigga Factory series. We put it together prior to COVID, at least draft 1. And we couldn't go any further when COVID hit. Everybody had to quarantine. Families, some of our families were affected personally with the virus. Some of the families of my crew. And then also, a lot of things happened. If you remember, during the top of this year, George Floyd was murdered, Breonna Taylor was murdered, people were hunted, Aubrey was hunted by, ex-cops and just killed for no reason, just because he was jogging. So many things happened that the finished, or the first draft that I had done, it didn't even seem like it didn't even scratch the surface of what had happened since then. There was it was the biggest protest movement because of George Floyd in the entire planet. People in Brazil were marching, people in London were marching, people in Australia were marching, people of color everywhere, and white people too, who were sympathetic to the realities of this, were marching across the planet. And that wasn't in Nigga Factory 3. So we decided to wait until COVID was over and try to readdress it again, so that it would be more relevant to what has happened since we finished the first draft.
Yeah, I can't wait to be able to see that part 3, because honestly, to me, I feel like it's very needed, and we need more hip hop based artists that can like really reach the community in a big broad spectrum, just coming together and talking about the realities of the things that's going on within the Black community. And I just want to say I appreciate that documentary that you put together, and I look forward to seeing more of that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Definitely. It's a labor of love. Like, I don't make any money from Nigga Factory. So I just put money in. That's all I do. So I put money in, we create it, and I put it on YouTube for free, and whatever little amounts of money that come in from YouTube, but it's nothing major. And like, it doesn't even begin to pay for the expenses of doing it.
Wow. And then I'm talking more about consciousness, and just back to your music. You actually did music for Spike Lee film Malcolm X. I want to know the story behind that, and how did you get approached to create music for that film?
Well, Malcolm X #1 is my favorite Black activist of all time. Well, that's not true. Marcus Garvey and then Malcolm X. So for me to even be a part of the Malcolm X film is just, it's again surreal. #2, Spike Lee is my favorite Black director ever. So to work with him was an honor, and I was very excited. He came up to us at a club in New York called Sweet Jane's, and he came backstage and talked to us about doing this record. And I was just thoroughly honored. And I got to shout out Chuck D from Public Enemy, who also suggested to Spike that that, you know, you should check out Speech and Arrested Development. And so I'm really grateful to Chuck for that, because that was a very big, you know, sort of handoff. And, you know, it was a great opportunity to be in the studio with Spike. He's a hands-on dude. He's a very professional cat. So we went to Brooklyn and we went in the studio. He was right there in the studio. He's one of the voices screaming "Revolution," you know, and just all up in it. And then after that, you know, we shot this music video with over 500 extras right in the heart of Brooklyn, Fort Greene area, and it was amazing. And extras and people in African outfits, warriors, dancers, signs, similar to the Fight the Power video, but more colorful was the approach that he took on our Revolution video. And then we shot at a school with hundreds of kids. So it was like, and we shot all of that in 7 hours, which is unheard of. Like, so I got a chance to see the professionalism that he was used to with doing major motion pictures. Because I've shot a lot of music videos before Revolution, and most of the time they take 2 to 3 days, and especially if you have hundreds of extras. For him, 7 hours, 3 or 4 locations, and trust me, it's near impossible. And talk about Black excellence, he was an example of that.
Yes, and of course that film was amazing. I actually watched it a few times, and you know, I just wish that we could have more of those documentaries on our, you know, our great black revolutionaries, you know, in history. And you helped to make history with that film. So, you know, big up to Spike Lee and you just collaborating, because music is so important to film as film is important to music. So with
Agreed.
that single that you guys put out, it just was like the perfect mesh of music and film together, and putting together an entire message. And you know, I feel like it was a bit, you know, it actually, I feel like it was overlooked. I feel like it deserved more accolades, more awards. But at the end of the day, we seen it. You know, the people felt it.
Yeah, we did feel it. And we know why it wasn't given the accolades that it highly deserved, is because it was about Malcolm X. And
Yeah, yeah,
Malcolm X, if anything, um was a thorn in the flesh of America. You know, he challenged America in every way, and he challenged us as a people in every way. And so I totally understand why this country, with all the racism that still exists within it, would not want to give a prize to Malcolm X, and instead would give Denzel Washington the prize of Training Day, where he was the first time he was a villain, or give Spike Lee the prize of an Oscar for Black Klansman, I think it was.
yeah, yeah. It was Black Klansman. I feel like he was way overdue for his
Way over.
award. Way overdue. I think he should have got it with the Malcolm X film. If you ask me.
Yeah, I think Do the Right Thing deserved it. I think School Days, you know, Malcolm X, Mo Better Blues, Jungle Fever. He's done so many fantastic films, you know.
And just to move forward to talk about more music that you guys put out. You put out an unplugged album, and that was around 1993. And then you put out your, I would say, full sophomore album in 1994, was the Zinga Lama Dooney. I want to make sure I said that right.
You got
And
it.
that,
Got
I did.
it. Yeah, you
Good.
nailed it.
All
Yeah.
right. I was right to like get it right.
Yeah, you got it.
And that spawned some more music out, but the sales didn't do as well.
No.
Um, what was it that made it so it didn't sell as good as the previous record? Like, what do you think happened?
Well, I think a lot of things happened. You know, one was that the music industry was against conscious music by this time. Um, the Cosby's was a huge television show. Black filmmakers were making conscious movies like Boys in the Hood, um, uh, you know, Do the Right Thing, uh, so on and so forth. So we really were covering all bases as far as a lot of the media was concerned. We were doing great conscious music with groups like Public Enemy, Arrested Development, X Clan, um, Poor Righteous Teachers, KRS One. I mean, you can name a lot of conscious groups, Jungle Brothers, Daylight, you know, Tribe. And you had movies like Spike Lee's movies and others. And then you had television shows like the Cosby's and Different World and all of this stuff that was talking about college enrollment and Higher Learning and all of this. Higher Learning, another film that was coming out at the time. So you had basically this conscious movement. And I think white America, or at least racist white America, was afraid of that movement. And so labels wanted to try to change, pivot and change. But not only that, a lot of blacks in our own community felt left out. So if you're a drug dealer on the corner and you're not a conscious dude, and maybe you even are against the conscious movement, because maybe the conscious movement, like the Nation of Islam or others, are sort of telling you to get off the corner, then you got, again, like I talk about in the song People Every Day, you got this clash of ideologies. You know, you got people that's sort of making their money over here, and you got people that's making, you know, a statement over there. So there was a lot of people in the music industry that wanted to see a change too. They didn't feel it was real hip hop anymore. They felt like hip hop needed to represent more of the gritty streets. And while I actually agree that hip hop always needs to be rooted in truth, what ended up happening with the success of Dre and NWA is that what started off as truth started to turn into caricature. And what I mean by that is just larger than life gangster images, larger than not even real to life, showing none of the downsides, just showing like balling out of control, women out of control, making money like crazy, moguls, businessmen, flying private jets, in yachts, on the islands, with women in bikinis. It just became this totally corporate, contrived thing that actually wasn't happening initially. It ended up happening in real life because unfortunately, a lot of times life imitates art. So it was this crazy thing that just sort of took it all over, and Arrested Development was caught in the waves of that. You know, it's like, here's a group that's still talking about consciousness at a time when people wanted to move on to moguls and they wanted to be like, yo, I want to make big bucks. And it was just a totally different movement.
And how did that affect you, like on a personal end? Because I know it maybe affect you on a business end, but how did it affect you personally to feel like, okay, I just reached my main goal, I've surpassed my goals, and then I try to move forward with my group, and this is how things end up. Like, how did you feel during that period?
It was by far the hardest period of my life. Um, well, one of them, because first of all, internally, the group was falling apart. And externally, the rug was being, at least how I saw it, the rug was being pulled out from under my feet creatively. So I feel like I'm doing great as an MC, as a producer, but the style of hip hop and what people wanted from hip hop totally started to change. In 1996, there was a law that was passed, and it was called the Telecommunications Act. And in that, it allowed for radio stations, TV stations, music video stations, newspapers to be bought up by the same companies. And so you started to see this music industry that had numerous labels become consolidated to three major labels. You started to see the music industry as far as media and videos and radio stations be bought up by these huge conglomerates. And so what ended up happening is the images of hip hop were controlled, instead of millions of great hip hop fans throughout the world, it was controlled now by corporate people in corporate offices. And when that happens, you're getting people that really are deciding what we're all going to love as hip hop fans that have nothing to do with hip hop. These cats are at golf courses playing in the Poconos and hanging out with their Yale kids and stuff, and they're talking about what hip hop records they're about to release to the world.
Yeah, and that's something that I noticed too, is that like it was so many conscious groups that they just all disappeared. So maybe that new law that was implemented had a lot to do with that.
It did. It did. There was, even before the law was implemented in 96, the Republicans were pushing for it. Bill Clinton is the one that signed it into law, but he signed it into law trying to appeal to the Republicans in order to win the votes that he needed to be president. So it was a mess. And when people say that the voting doesn't matter, I've always disagreed with that. Our ancestors disagree with that. They died and fought to vote. It does matter. Now, it may not matter with some of the things we're trying to change in every area. So, like, for people to think that voting is going to change everything for us, that's the wrong goal to have for voting, no matter voting locally or nationally for president. But to suggest it doesn't matter, it does. Ask the person who is in prison for a 50-year term, and because of who's president or who's in the office, they might get clemency. Ask the person who has no health care and can't afford to go to the hospital for a life-threatening disease if it matters who's in office. It does matter. So when people just rush to judgment that voting doesn't matter, it does matter. It just may not matter on some of the issues we're all passionate about. The other thing is it mattered with that Telecommunications Act. That law did change the atmosphere, and it's one of those unintended changes, but it definitely changed the atmosphere of what we're being fed in 2020 on the radio.
Mm, it's so true. And being part of the music industry and then being a DJ myself, I know what you're talking about. The things that the manipulation when it comes to like feeding the ears of listeners these days. Sometimes it's overwhelming. But I'm just hoping that you know over time it evolves, and we continue to, like, as bloggers or podcasters, we try to reach out to artists like yourself and stuff like that to talk to you and let our people know that there are still artists out here that people enjoyed from the 90s and stuff like that is still out here making amazing music. And you're still out here, you've been pushing out music, you've been doing what you need to do as an artist. And I just feel like it's unfair that, like, because of a law is passed, it basically it basically blocks you from being able to reach the people that you should be reaching, the people that are fans of yours. I'm wondering where's your music, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So the group ended up breaking up around what, 95, 96.
Yeah, 95.
What was the events that led to that?
A lot of internal, you know, beef. Basically, everybody was really going after the money bag at that point, and just the creativity, the camaraderie, the vision, the forward vision of what we can accomplish together became way less important than making sure everybody gets paid. And people were getting paid, don't get me wrong, but I mean, get paid. Like, everybody wanted a lot of money. And so what starts to happen is people who aren't producers want to produce. People that aren't writers want to write. People that they see, well, where do you make the most amount of money? Oh, right there. Okay, well, I want to do that. I want to do this. And it wasn't based on the music anymore. It was just based on, like, look, how do I make more money? And whenever that happens, you're doomed, because money becomes an incentive. The Bible says that money is the root of all kinds of evil. And that's true. I mean, anybody whose God or whose priority becomes money as opposed to whatever you want to get with the money, you're in a bad place, because there's people that hold the money and they are willing to have you do various things in order for you to get it. And so that's what happened to us.
Yeah, and from a legal standpoint, you had to protect your name because it looks as if, like, the bigger heads over at Fox decided to make a TV show based off your already, like, group name. Like what happened with that?
Yeah. So, in the trademark world, the whole objective of trademarking, which we trademarked our name in 93, in 2002 or something, I forget when this show came out. They came out with this TV show called Arrested Development. The problem with that is that when TV shows come out, generally speaking, they have a sound score that goes with the TV show. A lot of times they release CDs. So imagine a TV show called Jay-Z or a TV show called Beyonce. You can't do that, because even though Jay-Z is just some words put together and Beyonce is some letters put together, it also happens to be another entity that's in the entertainment industry that exists already. And so fans of Beyonce are going to rightfully think, oh, this TV show is about Beyonce. And if they find out it's about a white family somewhere in Texas or whatever, they're going to be surprised. Like, okay, there's this TV show called Beyonce. And that throws people off, and it also messes it up when you go to a record store, which there is no record stores anymore. But if you go to the streaming services or whatever, and there's this TV show called Beyonce that has an album out with music, and people are confused. That's what we were facing with Arrested Development. um, we had to sue because there's a history of groups that already did horribly without suing. Groups like Survivor, which is a rock group, groups like In Living Color, which is a rock group. Um, they all had TV shows that came out, and people forgot about the group and totally remembered the TV shows. And that's what we didn't want to happen to us. And we ended up settling out of court for numerous reasons, but it was a tough situation. We definitely had to fight for it. And me in particular had to fight in court and try to fight for the name.
Yeah, it definitely interfered. And then you also went to court to like split the name, the ownership of the name with Headliner, which is like one of also a founder member of the group too.
Yeah, so Headliner and I were best friends. You know, it was a horrible reality that ended up happening where me and him were not on the same page. And he felt like it should be 50-50. I felt like it should be different than that. And long story short, we ended up having to go to court. And it was just one of many fires that I was explaining a minute ago where everybody was sort of looking for this certain money bag. And unfortunately it split us up. And we did end up doing a deal where he got 40% of the group, I got 60% of the group. We split monies that way. But to be honest, it was one of those situations where the lawyers really won more than either of us did. And also I'll say, I talk about a lot of this on new music I'm doing, because we have an album out called Don't Fight Your Demons, but I'm working on another record now for Arrested Development, and I'm really going to dig deep into that subject matter. So I plan to talk a lot about that.
And talking about also new music, you actually I just seen your new music video for Becoming, and that's a part of your current EP that you have out. Tell the audience about that.
Yeah, we have a whole full album. It's called Don't Fight Your Demons. Becoming is our first single. It's produced by, the single is produced by Configure. He's a dude out of London, and it's written by me lyrically. It's a powerful song to me. Like, really, it's a story that I was inspired by when I went into jail to write music with the inmates, which I call residents. And there was a particular resident named Anthony who had a story about him being beaten as a child by a boyfriend of his mother. And he sort of goes into the streets to escape that abuse. It totally scarred him, and it helped him to become, really, it was probably the biggest catalyst for who he would become as a dude that had, and in so many ways, had gotten lost in the sauce, in a sense, consistently going to prison, consistently getting picked up by police, and just stuck in a cycle of recidivism. And so I talk a lot about that in this song. And it's really a journey. It's sort of a coming of age journey of a man, like Anthony, who was abused, went to the streets, found some love there to some extent, but kept getting locked up, going in and out of prison, and then growing from there.
Wow. And um now, since we're in the middle of the quarantine, what has been your overall approach when it comes to marketing this new project?
A lot of social media, just really, which for me is unique because I'm from a different era where there was no social media for our first album. So it's not even something that's a native language for me, but thank God I work with people that it is their native language and they get it. And also I'm a hard worker. So I'm on social media like all hours of the night, constantly talking to fans, retweeting things, just striving to keep this record relevant. I'm reaching out to different magazines, different influencers, letting them know about the record, and just, constantly making new content, compelling content that people hopefully are inspired by, and just keep it moving.
And just your overall goal with Arrested Development. Just two last questions. So what is your next goal like for the future for Arrested Development? What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish in this next chapter with the group?
My dream is for us to be able to capture a nice swath of the hip hop fans out there. I don't want to be a superstar. I don't want the group to be superstars. I want us to have a diehard cult following. I want us to be able to do 5,000 seaters throughout the world, anywhere we go. And I want us to really avoid the spotlight. I don't need the spotlight. I really just want to do respectable, great hip hop music with real diehard fans that know who we are and respect what we do. And I'm very happy. If I can do that for the next, 12, 15 years, you'd see a very happy speech.
Right, right. And just one last question. I had also read about you and Dionne Farris' relationship. Are you guys cool now since she left the group? Would you guys ever reunite or?
Well, Dion is someone that, number one, is just a blessing. She's a talented woman. And, you know, I have reached out to her numerous times to try to um, amend whatever was broken between us, because we've had times where she was extremely mad at me. Um, I never really been mad at her, but she was very mad at me. And so, trying to amend those things has been something that's been a constant journey for me with her. It doesn't seem that she's so receptive to it, but like, even if she ever watches this, I tell her, I always try to reach out to her, and I use this opportunity too. Dion, I have nothing but love for you. And I think that there's more that we should strive to do together. I think creatively we've done some wonderful things, and we should do more together. And I've apologized to you for things that you felt I offended you on, and I own it and say, okay, I'm sorry for that, and I'm willing to do more work, and at the very least, just be cordial. But so far, I've not had that opportunity to really confirm how we're doing. I know I'm not mad at her, and as you can tell by what I just said, I have nothing but love and respect for the sister.
Well, that's really good to hear. Who knows? In the future, maybe a reunion, something like that. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, definitely, just positive vibes in there. That's what we really need in the middle of all this stuff that's going on in the world. Try to reach out to people that we care about, see how they doing. If we can make
Exactly.
bygones be bygones.
No doubt about it. In fact, COVID has taken so many people's lives. It's taken friends of mine that I know very personally, way too young, and our lives are missed. And so it's very important for us to just be able to, you know, get over small things and move forward.
Absolutely. Now, we're in this new generation. Everything is social media. So I want to know where we can find you, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Where can we find you to just stay tapped into rest the development speech and everything that you got going on?
Yeah, go to arresteddevelopmentmusic.com, and that's our website, arresteddevelopmentmusic.com. You'll get all the records there, all of our social media handles, and IG, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And we got swag there. We got some great shirts, hoodies, a lot of nice gear too. So it's a great place to hang and sign our mailing list so we can make you aware, because we have two new albums out. I have a solo album out, well, EP called Expansion. Arrested Development has what seems to be fan favorite called Don't Fight Your Demons. It's a full album. It's out right now. And then we just released a song called Anya, which is, we released it during the election season on purpose. It's a standalone single. It's not part of any particular album, and it's called Anya, and it's powerful. So arresteddevelopmentmusic.com.
All right, you heard him, man. And everybody that's out there, please support Speechman and Arrested Development. He's one of the greatest pioneers, hip hop legends out here, putting out positive energy for a very, very long time. And I appreciate you. I thank you for coming on the show. And everybody that's out there, make sure you guys check out the podcast, the DJ Jerica Podcast, YouTube. I am DJ Jerica. Follow us social media at the DJ Jerica Podcast. And if you guys like to see the visuals, you watch it on YouTube. If not, check out the audio that's available right now. And the link is in the description for you guys to check out and listen to the audio.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Speech. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
DJ Erica.